Hi everyone, I'm so grateful and glad to be here today. I've got a lovely presentation for you to share with you my story about how I've been rising to the top, and I'm hoping that I will inspire you and lift you up no matter where you are on your journey to do the same. So please bear with me because I'm using two screens. I'm not quite used to all this, so give me a minute, but here we go. So before I begin, I just want to let you guys know that my presentation does have themes of abuse, self-abuse, and suicide. I understand that may be triggering to some people, and sometimes I swear. In fact, I swear a lot. So if any of these things are an issue, it's time to duck out. But it's all relevant, and if I do encourage you to stay to the end, because trust me, it's going to be worth it. So, hello. I'm Lace. As Lisa already said, I'm a self-sabotage mentor and empowerment coach, and it's really lovely to meet you. I'm just going to give you a little background about me. So I'm a mother of 3 beautiful children. I'm a survivor, and I was living in the UK. Right now, I am coming live to you from Chiapas in Mexico. My background is in forensic science, criminal investigation, mental health nursing, and holistic therapies and alternative medicine. Like I said, I'm currently in Mexico. I'm traveling full time with 2 of my daughters, and we have been exploring Mexico and Guatemala very recently. My sole purpose, I feel, and I know in my heart, is to share my story, which I believe is my superpower. I want to lift people up. I want to inspire you, no matter where you are on your current journey, to keep rising to the top. And I know that with all my heart, I'm here to speak my truth, and I'm going to reach millions with it. In my coaching practice, I work with ambitious online business owners to leave fear behind, leave it at the door, and unlock their full potential so that becoming wildly successful becomes almost effortless. Sorry. And yeah, so like I said, there may be some triggering stuff in here and some colorful language, but it's all good. But before we jump into my story, I just want to give some clarity on what exactly self-sabotage is. So self-sabotage is any repetitive behavior which you can't stop doing for too long a duration, even though the execution of said behavior makes your life worse. All right, I'm just catching up with my own stuff. So self-sabotage is actually a form of arrested development, and it starts in childhood. And if we don't catch on to this and do something about it, what happens is it follows us into our adulthood, and our adult life becomes chaotic and very miserable, like mine had been. I know it sounds harsh, but it's very true. And the reason that it's true is because we're wired to seek what is familiar. So when negative behavior is what is familiar to us from childhood, we become almost like a magnet for this stuff, and we start to attract this familiar brand, this familiar scent of negativity and chaos, abuse, or whatever it is. We just attract it unknowingly, of course, because none of us want to go out and actually attract this stuff. So how does self-sabotage show up in your life? There's lots of different ways that self-sabotage shows up in our life. So I'm just going to run through just a few of them, which you may be able to resonate with. So the first one I've got is yo-yo dieting, poor diet, poor health, or chronic health problems. So think about cereal dieting. I've tried all the diets in my lifetime, everything from cabbage soup to Weight Watchers, or gym memberships that we get all hyped up about, and then we go for 1 month and then we never go back. I've also done that. Or perhaps you're one of these people that go off and you buy all the gym equipment and you make your home gym, and now it's just collecting dust, or you're using it as a wardrobe because, you know, life gets in the way. It's too busy, not enough time, children, work, you know, all these things are preventing you from going ahead and making that time to exercise. Or we have ongoing health problems, or things that just keep recurring. They just won't go away. And what this is our body's way of communicating with us. And what we tend to do is, you know, cover it up. We drown it in pills, painkillers, you know, things to stop those symptoms. But what we need to actually do is listen to our bodies and pay attention, because if we don't, it's going to make us stop by making us ill. It's going to slow us down. Toxic relationships. Have you found yourself in an unhealthy cycle of relationships or attracting abusive partners? I know I have, and this is something I'm going to talk to you more about in the coming slides. Brokenness. This was me, poor, financially dependent, and unable to hold on to any money even when I got hold of it. Good examples of sort of the self-sabotage and brokenness is if you look at lottery winners. Quite often, people who win the lottery, they win thousands of pounds and then they blow it. They blow it on drugs, they blow it on prostitutes, they blow it on cars, fancy handbags, whatever it is. And it's like they race back to being as poor as they were before they won. And then they lose everything and they're back to square one with nothing. How about stop-start adventures or not adventures, ventures or projects or hobbies, stuff like that? How many times have you started like a new business? You set out to start something brand new or a new course or a habit, and you buy all the things, everything you need to get going. And then these things are now just sitting, barely used, untouched, courses unfinished. This is something I used to do all the time, always starting a new business, always starting a new hobby, buying all of the things, and then they just sit there and gather dust. Another way that self-sabotage shows up in our life quite often is self-doubt and low confidence. So have you ever felt like you're not good enough, or you're scared to try new things? Or do you feel like you're going to be judged or laughed at for whatever it is you're trying to achieve? I mean, 12 months ago, I myself was actually terrified of going live. And here I am today speaking to all of you. So a lot can change in 12 months. But instead of feeling, frightened of failure or, what will people think, ask yourself in this situation, what is the worst that can happen if whatever it is you set out to do doesn't work out? And generally, the worst thing can happen is, you have to start again. I always ask myself or say to myself, if it's not going to kill me, I might as well do it because I'll still be alive at the end of it. But these are just some of the ways that we can recognize self-sabotage in our lives. And I'm just wondering, maybe sit with this just now and ask yourself, do any of these patterns or things I've talked about come up for you? Which ones can you resonate with? So we're going to jump in to my story, which has a lot of self-sabotage. And we're going to take it right back to childhood. So when I was very small as a child, I witnessed and experienced a lot of different types of abuse, from sexual to dysfunctional relationships. So my stepfather, who lived with me from when I was 4, was an alcoholic. Really, really had serious problems with alcohol. And even to this day, now that I'm 34, he is still an alcoholic. So I used to experience all of this. And his family were also alcoholics. So there was a lot of drinking and a lot of substance abuse of alcohol as I was growing up. And this would always end up in like fights and arguments, and it got physical as well. And I'd witnessed this most weekends, and my stepdad was always drunk. He was drunk after work. He was probably drunk when he was at work. It was just all the time. And one of his sons was abusive towards me as well. I'm not going to go into it too much, but there were things that were happening to me between the ages of 8 and 13 that should not have been happening to me. And that was because of his eldest son. So, we'll move on from that. So as I grew up and I entered into my teens, I went down this path of, dysfunctional, abusive relationships, except for one. When I was in high school and I was about 15, I was 15 years old, I started dating a beautiful boy called Alex. And we had a lovely, very nice relationship. But it was short-lived because his mother didn't like me. And every time he used to come and see me, his mum used to give him a good beating when he got home. So obviously, and naturally, as you would expect, he broke it off with me because he couldn't cope with the beatings that he was taking for hanging out with me. And the last thing he said to me was that he'd come back for me one day. And of course, being 15 years old, I sort of rolled my eyes and was like, yeah, all right, whatever. I left school, I went off to college, and we lost contact completely. So when I was about 16, I met another lad who was nowhere near as nice as Alex. He was very nasty. He was very abusive towards me. He was physically violent and he raped me. And this caused me to eventually leave London completely, where I was living. I ran away because when I eventually had the strength to break up with him, he returned and began stalking me. And he'd stand outside my house for hours and hours on end, for days and days at a time. And I was terrified. I was terrified of what he was going to do to me. I was terrified of being at home. I was terrified of going outside. I was literally just terrified of existing. So in the end, I applied for university. Time had passed between now and then, and I went as far away as I could. And I went to the north of England. I was living in London, and I went to the north of England. And I went off and I went to university, and, I did a lot of partying, a lot of drinking, the whole university thing that I think most people do when they go on to further education. And I met my eldest dad. Now, my eldest father was an infantryman in the British Army, and he also had alcohol abuse issues. I'm sure he was traumatized from the things that he'd been through, and he used to drown his pain in alcohol. Unfortunately for me, that meant that I had to deal with the brunt of his drunkenness, which would result in him beating me up, restraining me, holding me down, and quite often I'd wake up completely covered in bruises, and he would have no recollection of the things that he'd been doing to me. So I did eventually split up with him as well. And then I was pretty much on my own. My eldest at the time, she was only 8 months old. So you can imagine my surprise and delight when I got a phone call from a friend of mine who I used to go to school with and said, "Hey, guess who's trying to contact you?" And I was like, "Oh, who's that?" And she said, "Oh, Alex, he's come back to London and he's looking for you." 4 years later, my high school sweetheart, Alex, had come back for me. I was absolutely over the moon, totally blown away. Couldn't believe he actually kept his promise. So, we got on the phone, we got to talking. We spent about 6 hours chatting to each other like nothing had changed. And I agreed to go and meet him in London. So I went off to London for 3 days, met up with him, had loads of fun, reconnected. It was beautiful. And he said, "I'm a grown man now." He was 19. "I can do what I want. My mum can't tell me nothing, and I want to marry you." I mean, I couldn't say no, could I? So the following day, we were supposed to meet up for the last time. And the night before, I remember feeling this like sickness in my stomach, like in the pit of my stomach. It was awful. It was the most horrible feeling I've ever felt. And I couldn't figure out what it was, but I knew something terrible was going to happen, and it was something to do with Alex. So I called him about 3 o'clock in the morning. I said, "Hey, what's wrong?" And he said, "Nothing, everything's fine. I can't wait to see you in the morning. I love you, and I'll see you soon." So the following morning, he didn't show up. I couldn't get in touch with him. His sister said that he'd gone out, but left his bus pass, his phone, his keys, everything that you would usually take with you. He'd left it at home. So I couldn't figure out where he'd gone. And that evening, as I was going home, because it was my time to go home, I had a phone call from his sister saying that the body of a black male had been found at her local train station on the lines. And that's when I knew it was him. And a few hours later, it was confirmed it was Alex. He jumped off the railway bridge and he'd taken his own life. So as you can imagine, my life just went downhill after that. I didn't know what to do with myself. I was broken, absolutely broken. And I fell into my own depression, full of big pharma drugs, all the antidepressants, all the mood stabilizers, slapped with every single label in the world. You've got depression, you've got mood disorders, you've got bipolar disorder. My life sucked. I was so miserable and I was in so much pain that I just wanted it to stop. And I attempted to take my life on 3 separate occasions and ended up in hospital, but alive each time. And at that time, I wasn't very happy to be alive, but I was alive. So, and that was in 2009. 2010, I came off all the big pharma drugs And in 2012, I applied to do mental health nursing. And in 2014, I had a massive car accident. So this is some more chaos that happened in my life. I had a head-on collision. I was left with a broken femur, trapped in my car, and I was airlifted to hospital, where I spent 8 days in a coma on a ventilator. And they didn't expect me to make it. But obviously, I'm here speaking to you today, so I did make it. My daughter at the time was 6. That was 2014. 2015, I got married to yet another abusive partner, another toxic relationship. Right, so as you can see, there are many repetitive themes and cycles here with toxic relationships, chaos, and dysfunction. This was my life. I was attracting and repeating what was familiar over and over and over again. And despite it causing me intense pain and intense misery, and my conscious mind didn't want these things, I kept bringing them to myself somehow on a completely unconscious level. So what do you do when you're in that much pain? You sedate it. I ate too much. I drank too much. I was smoking cannabis daily with tobacco. I lost weeks of my life in Netflix and on social media because I was dulling my pain. I was sedating myself and my misery, and I was trying to hide my sadness over an unfulfilled life. And this is such a common thing for us to do when we're in pain. We will sedate ourselves to make us feel better, and we will do it through bad habits, through addictions, through drugs, food, big pharma. And I was in the thick of it. My marriage was incredibly unhappy. I was unhealthy, and I would wake up most days just thinking, fuck, not this again. And it was like Groundhog Day, the days would just repeat exactly the same. And I would get up in the mornings and proceed to walk on eggshells, hoping not to put a foot wrong, because if I did, I would be subject to the rage that would come out of my husband. And it happened often. I was overweight, I was unhappy, I was unhealthy, and I was financially dependent on him. I felt trapped and worthless. I was losing myself, and I'd actually had enough. But not in the way you'd probably think I had enough. Now, I was just sick of living the same shit different day. I was sick of the same arguments. I was sick of walking on eggshells. I was sick to death of feeling exhausted, and I knew I had to change. I wanted to change my situation. So instead of doing what I'd usually do and turn to self-harm or more sedation, I actually hired a coach and went back into education. And that was in 2020. So I worked with a master self-sabotage coach, Jason Christoph. Any of you guys have heard of him? That was back when he was actually taking one-to-one clients. He doesn't anymore. And we went through the process of overcoming my self-sabotage. And this process was life-changing. It was the beginning of the complete transformation of my life. And I also trained and got certified under Jason at the same time. And I qualified with flying colors. Flying colors, my bad. So the two pictures that you can see here were taken about 12 months apart. Obviously, I'm smiling in both, but you can see there's been a huge transformation in just how I look. I dropped a whole bunch of weight since taking this course, and I didn't do any dieting. No cabbage soup, no Slim Fast. So going through this process of the self-sabotage coaching with Jason, realization hit me, and it hit me hard because I was terrified and I knew I had to step out of my comfort zone. And what actually hit me quite quickly was that I knew my marriage had to end. I knew that I had to support myself financially, but all I'd ever known was being, in poor relationships. All I'd ever known was being poor or financially dependent. And I really didn't know or feel that I could even, look after myself. What was I going to do? How was I supposed to look after me? It was also at this time I felt called to actually go to Mexico. And Mexico is a place at that time I'd never been to. I'd never wanted to go. And other than hola and gracias, I didn't speak any Spanish. And what a funny point is I also didn't much like hot weather, and I didn't think I liked Mexican food. So you can imagine how this went down when like I told people, hey, like I'm gonna go to Mexico, and they're like, right, okay, you don't like hot weather, you don't like the food, you know, you've never wanted to go there before, you don't speak Spanish, like what are you thinking? I didn't even have passports. Me and my kids didn't even have passports at this time. So it sounded crazy, but you know, I felt in my gut, just like I felt with Alex, that this is, you know, I needed to do it. I felt it that strongly. So I was like, you know what, fuck it. It will happen. I'll make a way. But despite all of this, like, you know, wanting to get away and wanting to make these changes, I was absolutely terrified because I couldn't imagine my life any other way than being quite miserable. And I couldn't imagine not being, you know, in the relationship I was in, although I was so unhappy. And I couldn't imagine how I'd ever like support myself financially or, you know, support my children or any of these things. It all just seemed really foreign. But at the same time, you know, the things that I had learned within the coaching program and the process I'd been through, I felt very empowered. I knew that I had it within me to make these changes. It was just a matter of applying the things that I'd learned. So it was time to step up, and it was time to start making those steps towards freedom. So over the next 2 years, I got to work taking my power back, because our power has always been ours and it always will be ours. The only way that it's not is when we give it away. Okay. But we can always take it back. So my biggest issue with all of this, making these changes, was that I completely lacked support. I didn't have the support of my husband because he didn't want me to change. He wanted me to stay exactly the same. I lacked friends. I didn't have many friends other than quite a decent online circle of people that I'd met. I didn't have any like real life friends. So what actually happened to me is I started to slide back into my old habits, into my, you know, sedating myself. I began smoking cannabis again. I began drinking and overeating all over again because I really needed support. I wanted support. I wanted someone to, you know, have my back and be encouraging me because I felt very alone. And when you're trying to make these like really big life changes, we need support. We need people in our corner. And often we look to the people that are supposed to love us to give us this support. And sometimes we don't find it. Quite often we don't find it because what happens is people that don't want us to change, or they don't, you know, they're not doing so well themselves, they don't want you to do well either. You know, it's like crabs in the bucket. If crabs start to try and climb out of the bucket, the other crabs will pull it back in. That's exactly what humans are like as well. So the ones that I was surrounded with at that time were the crabs pulling me back into the bucket when I'm desperately trying to get out. So what I decided to do was really push myself, and I went out to meet a local Facebook friend, and she actually became a really close friend. Bless her heart, her name's Sammy, and she's just the most gorgeous woman I've ever met. She's a beautiful soul. So we began to meet weekly at the local cafe, and she supported me and she encouraged me throughout this whole process. And this support and this encouragement and having someone to lean on was what really helped me to make those leaps and make those big decisions about my future, because I knew what I wanted, but I kept wobbling. So it was really awesome to have someone in my corner, like, you know, no, you can do this, you know, that's really what I needed. And despite my relapses, you know, I kept going, I kept pushing. It doesn't matter if you're trying to make big changes and you relapse and you go back to drinking or you go back to smoking. It's temporary. You know, the whole point of going through all of this is something we really need to remember, is that it's about progress. It's not about perfection. It's about progress. And as long as you keep progressing, that's what matters. And that's what I kept doing, just making progress, no matter how small, and then celebrating it. And also not beating myself up when I slid back into old patterns. It's all about making that progress. And the one friends that I had at that time as I was, you know, making these big changes made all the difference to my progress. And what actually happened in the end over those 2 years of me continuing to take those steps and make that progress is I quit drinking alcohol completely. I educated myself in cryptocurrency and precious metals and began building portfolios between both of them. And I hired another coach, a business coach this time, and I launched an online business. Oh, and in that last slide just there, you could see my vision board that I created. Can you see that at the bottom? So I created a board of, my big dreams, my big goals, and I made sure I looked at that every single day. And that was also very, very helpful in creating what I've created now. And then everything changed. Like nothing was the same anymore. Everything changed. So right after the launch of my very first program, which I was really quite successful with because I actually made a few £1,000s from that launch, I boarded the plane and left for Mexico with my children. And honestly, leaving the UK was the best thing I ever did. I'm not saying that, if you're in a country and you're in a bad situation, you should just jump on a plane, leave all your shit behind and just go. No, absolutely not. You have to do what you feel called to do. You have to do what's right for you. But for me, my calling was to go to Mexico. My calling was to leave all my shit behind and just go. And that's what I did, because I just thought, it's just stuff. It can be replaced. My happiness, my mental health is worth so much more. So I took that leap and I left. And it was honestly the best thing I ever did. The only thing is even though I'd left the UK, I continued to hang on to my very unhealthy marriage for about 2 months until I finally felt safe and able to let it go. I created such a distance between us that I felt like I could finally let that go. It took all the courage I think I had, every ounce of bravery that I could muster. That's what it took for me to leave that relationship. I didn't even think I was capable of doing it, but I did. And I ended it and I walked away from it. And it was like a weight was lifted. I dropped a bunch of weight and I smile every day, something I wasn't doing very often at all. And I sing, I sing when I'm happy, and I don't think I'd sang in years. Now I sing all the time. And since then, I've been traveling Mexico and Guatemala with my 2 girls. And my business has shifted because when I originally started out, I was teaching crypto and metals, but it shifted back into my original call, which was post-car accident. I had the call to move into coaching. Just at that time, I had no idea, like, what was I going to coach in? I just didn't know, but I knew that's where I needed to go. And finally, I've shifted back into that. So I've harnessed my experience and what I've learned with Jason about self-sabotage and moved into empowerment coaching. And my coaching practice focuses on helping ambitious business owners, both aspiring and established. So don't feel if you haven't started your business yet that I'm not available to you, because that is untrue. I am. But yeah, I help both aspiring and established business owners unlock their full potential on a subconscious level, so that becoming I'm losing my words. This happens to me after I had the coma incident with the car accident. Sometimes I lose my words and it just comes out of a bunch of gobbledygook. So I apologize. But yes, let me try that again. So I help both aspiring and established business owners unlock their full potential on a subconscious level, so that becoming prosperous and wildly successful is almost effortless. And I've created a holistic alchemy using diet, lifestyle, mindset, and subconscious programming techniques, which I blended together with that missing link, the support. So I will hold space, I kick ass when needed, and celebrate my clients as they walk the path to greater prosperity in their business, wealth, health, and happiness, which is essentially what I've done for myself. And I'm also creating a very powerful Facebook community of online business owners where we can connect, we can network, we can share the ups and downs of being business owners whilst doing life, and we're on that path to bigger and better things. But honestly, don't feel, because I'm not a business owner, or I'm not quite ready to go out and be an online business owner, that you can't work with me. I will commit my time to work with anyone who is committed to themselves and is committed to making changes to make themselves and their lives and the life of their family better. So if you really want change and you're committed to making it, I will commit myself to help you to do that. But yeah, we left the UK in February this year, so it's all still quite fresh. And I think since then, now I've been pharma free for 12 years. I've been nicotine free for 2.5 years. I've been alcohol free for 6 months. And I've been reefer free for about 3 months. And instead of doing those things, now I spend my time sharing my story and coaching others who desire to set themselves free as well. And the picture there was taken very recently when we went to visit Chiapa di Corzo, which is a beautiful little town not too far from where I'm living at the moment. So how about you? How about you? How are you feeling? You know, are you sick of living the same shit, different day kind of life? Are you tired of feeling mentally and physically exhausted? You know, do you want to change, but you don't feel that perhaps you don't have the willpower or the money to change your situation? Or do you feel that you lack support and encouragement to make those big changes? I know I certainly did feel like that. You know, where are you at right now? Has my story resonated with you at all? If so, I would like to invite you to work with me for free. So I'd like to invite you to my very first masterclass, which is going to be taking place live, which is called Wildly Successful You. And it's happening on the 27th of this month, October 2022 at 2:30 p.m. CST. Depending on where you are in the world, you will need to go and convert that time so it's, you know, relevant to you. But let me just tell you what is going down. So if you decide to come along and join me, you will discover 3 things that wildly successful entrepreneurs know and how you can use this knowledge to create more money in your business. You will learn why fear is the most significant barrier to your success and how you can let go of fears so that they no longer hold you back from the joy and abundance you desire in your business. And finally, you'll learn how to gain more support and encouragement so that you can confidently embrace lifestyle changes and become a healthier, happier, and more prosperous you. So if that sounds like your cup of tea, coffee, noffee, whatever it is you like to drink, you can save your spot by coming along and contacting me on Facebook, send me a DM, or join my free community group, the Online Business Owners Lounge, OBO Lounge, and I can get in contact with you there and I will send you an email with your invite confirming your space. It is completely free. So yeah, just get in contact with me and I'll do the rest. So let's connect. You know, if you'd like to follow along with my work, follow along with my story as it continues to unfold, because I am still on that journey. I am still making those steps, still making that process of healing and becoming better. And, you know, just continue with everything that I've been doing. If you're interested to connect or follow, or you'd like to work with me, you can join me on Facebook. Send me a friend request. I'm Lace Flowers. There's only one of me. Or you can join my groups I just mentioned, which is the Online Business Owners Lounge. I believe there's only one of those 2. I'm on Instagram, so you can get me on Insta at Lace Flowers Coaching, or you can pop me an email, lace@laceflowerscoaching.com. But yeah, thank you for listening to me. Thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure to share this with you. And it's also been incredibly empowering for me, but also very hard because I've never spoken about my story in this sort of detail ever anywhere, not publicly. So this for me is a big one. This is a bit of a win for me. And thank you for coming along and listening. And please remember these 2 things. Everything that you need is already within you. And whatever you do, just remember, it's not about perfection. It's about progress.